Chargers undrafted free agent linebacker Marlo Wax had a statement game and did everything he could to make the roster, and we're going to tell you if it was enough.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, making it to the NFL as an undrafted free agent is incredibly difficult. But if you want to make it, you play like Marlo Wax did in his last preseason game. He did absolutely everything he could to leave it all on the field to make it a really hard decision for the Chargers organization. And Oronde Gadsden II finally showed up, scored a big touchdown, and looks like that might be something that we may be looking at seeing a lot more often, hopefully, from Justin Herbert. And we got an update on Najee Harris, and it kind of sounds positive.
I mean, yeah, there's at least a chance, according to Joe Ortiz, that Najee Harris, after everything that's happened, could be out there in week 1. How much are we putting into that? We're going to get into it. But it starts, David, with this game against the 49ers. The Chargers obviously lose, but there hasn't been a single recap show that's really been about the result. This was a sloppy game, a real preseason game, right, where everything, so many penalties, so much ugliness.
Oh, my goodness.
But the one kind of bright, shining light was Marlo Wax, who has kind of been building to a performance like this and put up a Tony Jefferson-esque performance, David, on Saturday night against the 49ers, where it just doesn't feel like there's enough space for him on this team. Like, the numbers just don't add up. But then you see this game and this performance in just one single drive where it's a tackle for loss, a stopping coverage, a 4th down stop, and you just say to yourself, how can they keep Marlo Wax off this team based on the performance we just saw?
It was a great performance. We're talking about 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, a sack, 2 QB hits, and a passes defense there. That's leaving it all on the field. That's absolutely doing everything within your power to go out there and try to earn your spot on this roster. And yeah, I'm with you. I think the numbers, it's almost going to be impossible. And I hate to say that because for him, he's done everything he possibly could throughout, not even just this game, but throughout the preseason. We're talking about 21 tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a pass defense, and 3 run stuff. So he's been everywhere. He's been all over the field. He's been incredibly active, and he's been fun to watch. He's a guy that has really kind of came out of nowhere, put himself on the radar, and like I said in the beginning, it's going to make it a very, very tough decision for Marlo Wax because he played his heart out.
He absolutely did. And I literally don't think that there was much more he could have done. I mean, per Pro Football Focus, he had the best defensive grade on the team by a full 10 points. Nikko Reed was second with an 83.7, but not to be compared to Marlo Wax's 93.7 grade. But overall, I mean, in the preseason, 8 defensive stops in 4 games. I mean, This is someone that also, including, as part of your stats, had the 4th down stop in a big moment, had the strip sack that turned into a turnover for his team. I mean, like I said, it was Tony Jefferson-esque. This is per Tyler Schoen, who says, versus other linebackers, 8th best defensive grade, 1st in pressures amongst linebackers, and forced fumbles and pass breakups, only 1, but 5th in stops, top 15 in stop percentage, and pass rush win rate. There was really nothing he didn't do, and I think that it's just hard. It's almost like the Chargers would have rather him not had this game, right? Because now he's kind of put himself on the radar for the rest of the teams around the NFL. And this is per Alex Katzen, who says, hey, out of roughly 1,184 cuts per season over the past 5 seasons, only about 2.2% of them were claimed by other teams. So it's not much. There is a chance that he gets really through waivers. And yeah, I mean, that's a small percentage. But it happened to the Chargers last year, right? Thomas Harper was safety from Notre Dame that they had, who had a really, really good preseason.
Yeah.
They waive him. The Raiders pick him up, and he played well for them last season. So there is a chance, and I think it's just tough, David, because you're like, Delshon Phillips, we heard from special teams coordinator Ryan Ficken last week that he's a squared away guy.
That was the big one.
That was the big kind of domino that had to fall there. We know that Troy Dye and Denzel Perryman, Deion Henley, and Junior Colson are all safe. And I think that's the frustrating part for fans, David, is you watch Junior Colson out there struggling in the preseason, and you're like, look, I'm watching this guy, and it's not all apples to apples, but I'm watching these two linebackers playing in these games, and Marlo Wax looks like the much better guy. They're not going to give up on a third-round pick, but there's also no way they're keeping 6 linebackers on this roster. Even if, like, the only chance really is if Junior Colson, who did have to miss this game, does have to go on the short-term IR to start the season and miss the first 4 games. Maybe you could keep 5 linebackers still, but it's still going to be tough. They're going to use that number potentially somewhere else too. So I think that's the frustrating part. It's like, man, he did everything he could do. But like you said, the numbers, I just don't think will add up even with this performance.
Yeah, I hear it and I see it too with Junior Colson, but the pedigree of being a 3rd round pick, also playing at Michigan with Coach Harbaugh, with Jesse Minter, like they've seen this guy play at the height of his abilities in college football and know what that looks like when it's on the football field. Now we haven't really seen that yet at the NFL level, but we have also seen that it's taken several other linebackers multiple years for things to click and make sense, and then they really take off from there. So I think that's probably what they're holding out hope for Junior Colson. But yes, unfortunately, he's definitely not in any jeopardy of being cut. I think his spot is secured.
And we'll see what happens, right? Tomorrow we're going to do a live 53-man roster prediction, do a live show so we know what cuts have happened tomorrow before we make our final predictions, and we can kind of update it from there. I'm having a hard time trying to find a way on, but he did everything he could to have a chance. He's a practice squad guy at the least, and maybe just cross your fingers and hope he doesn't get picked up on waivers. But what about Nikko Reed, David, who had another solid performance? When he's been out there, he's been good. Really, the only thing you can hold against him is that he missed a game. Didn't have a ton of action in this one, but also I didn't think did anything to hurt his chances of making the roster. And now it's just going to come down to, can he make it probably over Jasir Taylor, I think is the biggest question going into tomorrow.
Yeah, it certainly is. And the thing for Nikko Reed is early in this game, he had a pass breakup pretty quickly, then really only had a couple of tackles the rest of the way. Throughout the preseason, he had 8 tackles, 4 passes defensed, and an interception, but also was a guy that was making a ton of plays in training camp as well. He was all over the field, picking off Justin Herbert, right? Like, that's something that not very many people can claim, as Justin Herbert has one of the lowest interception rates in NFL history. So that's definitely something that's very rare. Obviously in practice, it's a different type of environment, but he has showed up and also garnered high praise from Jesse Minter as well, saying, hey, you make a play a day, people are going to start knowing your name. And I think we all know Nikko Reed's name now. And I think the performance wasn't like a stamp, like 100%, hey, I'm the guy, but I don't think that we saw anything that we didn't want to see or anything that hindered his chances either.
Yeah, well, I think he was just kind of a victim of opportunity, right? He was only targeted once in the game, and the one time he was targeted, he broke the pass up. So nothing you can really hold against
results.
him. I think that the bigger thing here as far as the bad news for Nikko Reed is just the fact that he did play less snaps than Jasir Taylor did. It was closer than I thought, at least on the first watch. Jasir Taylor played 21. Nikko Reed played 27. Nikko Reed was in the game later than Jasir Taylor. We know that Jasir Taylor is a starting gunner for this team and is an important special teams player. And if things are close, we heard Jim Harbaugh tell us that can go to special teams, which might give him the edge. But I think the hard thing here is just, I really want to put him on my final 53 tomorrow. I mean, it feels like the kid can play. They're always looking for corners, and they told us that. And this is a guy that, through 3 preseason games, got targeted 10 times, only allowed 3 catches and a passer rating of 33. So he hasn't really done any. Yeah, I mean, God, there's one, Eric Rodgers game. Both those guys look like they can play, and it feels like I don't know if you would get claimed by another team, but I wouldn't be super shocked either. I mean, hopefully, if they don't keep him, they can put him on the practice squad. But like, if you're talking about doing enough to make a team, Nikko Reed did enough in this preseason and in training camp to make the team. We're just going to see if the Chargers can make the numbers work. But we still have more to get into, including Oronde Gadsden finally having his shining moment and catching a deep bomb from DJ U, who showed a ton of potential. So we're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident in control when the moment is right. If the traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer, and over 150,000 men have already made the switch, and you can even read the real customer reviews on their site. It's helping make people feel a lot more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law and are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit Rougiette website for full safety information. Guys, tomorrow is the day, August 26th, FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on the NFL season predictions, so whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So you can take a flyer on Justin Herbert to win MVP with the 6 best odds at plus 2,000. You could crown your champion in August or parlay your division winner dark horses. Maybe it's the Chargers, who are currently plus 330 behind the Chiefs and the Broncos to win the AFC West. But I have a different take on it if you guys watch the divisional crossover we have coming up. But visit FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is tomorrow, one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. David, we still have a lot more from this game to get into, and there was one guy we never really questioned if he would be making the roster or not. I mean, since he got to camp and started making big plays, and that was Oronde Gadsden II, a guy that we weren't super familiar with early on in the draft process, but as we started getting to day 2 and day 3 of the draft, it was somebody, we called out before it happened. Hey, this is a guy, maybe you pivot, maybe you bring this guy and see what he can do. And I think he's even exceeded my expectations of how quickly he could translate to the NFL level as far as making big plays at practices, getting first team reps, and all of those things. But he didn't really have a shining moment in a game until Saturday night, where his really, his receiving ability really showed itself on a big touchdown, a 25-yarder from DJ Uiagalelei, who really delivered a dime. But the biggest performance from Oronde Gadsden II so far, David, just in time with the season coming up, showing another, putting more film on tape to show why he should be part of this offense in 2025, even as a rookie.
Yeah, ever since he started making plays early on in rookie minicamp, I was like, okay, this is it right here. This is the guy I've been waiting for. I have been desperately wanting the Chargers to get a true receiving threat at the tight end position. They've tried to bring a couple of guys in. Some guys have performed admirably, and I think Justin Herbert has shown that if you can get open and you're a tight end, he is going to get you the football. I mean, look what he did with Will Dissly last year. Will Dissly did not have anywhere close to those type of stats with anybody else, but being thrust into action with Justin Herbert, goes out there and has what can only be described as a career year. So for OG, who is a much more natural pass catcher, a guy that can really attack the seam, that really has great speed, good size, who is really kind of built for this role, you only wanted to see that come to fruition in a game, and we finally saw it. 3 catches, 48 yards, including that big, beautiful touchdown in the right corner of the end zone. That was a fantastic play and a beautiful throw. I mean, just absolutely right on the money. Love to see that. I think it just put the cherry on top of what I think was a very kind of pretty meteoric rise for Oronde Gadsden II, who has shown himself to have some real ability. Now I want to see it on Sundays with Justin Herbert.
We knew the Chargers, when they traded up for him, saw something, right? They were really confounded on what to do when they had a choice with their first 5th round pick between Keandre Lambert-Smith and Oronde Gadsden. You could tell it was eating at them because they loved KLS so much they had to take him. And you know how much they loved Oronde Gadsden, which shows you, how much they love KLS just because they took him first. But they made sure to trade back up into the 5th round to go get Oronde Gadsden II, and he is, really showing why they did that. And also, you know, shout out to Joe Ortiz, who looks like he might have got another one or another two in the fifth round. But 3 catches, 46 yards and a touchdown, easily his biggest preseason performance. Also had a nice block where he had a nice, you know, motion, sealed off a defender, opened up a rushing lane, you know, for a nice 8-9 yard run at one point. It was really great to see because that was the biggest question surrounding him. But I do think that what you've always kind of looked for is an elite kind of mismatch at that position, which they just haven't had since Justin Herbert's got here. And look at what happened, you know, when Gerald Everett left and when, you know, Jared Cook left. Like it just your receiving ability kind of drops off a cliff. So let's talk about DJU though, because he had a hell of a first half, man. Like in the first half, I thought DJU was QB2 because of how well he played in that first half. 6 for 6, 103 yards and a touchdown, just throwing darts all around the field, including the ridiculous throw he had rolling to the right to Oronde Gadsden for a 25-yard touchdown. But it all kind of came crashing down to earth, and I think kind of my take on his performance in this game, David, is this. You saw exactly why he should be a practice squad player. You saw exactly the potential that you wanted to see from him. The arm talent is ridiculous for sure, but you also saw why he's not ready to be on an active roster. But I do think as far as, hey, could this guy be a potential long-term backup with Trey Lance and Taylor Heineke both on one-year deals? I think it's worth investing in, and I think he showed that even with the pick 6, you know, and everything that kind of unraveled in the second half.
Well, I think you can see it, right? I mean, there's some quarterbacks to go out there and play. You're like, man, this guy does not have what it takes. He just doesn't have the arm strength, doesn't have the arm quality. You can see what it looks like. You know what it looks like when a guy can really rip it. And for DJU, I think you saw that, you know, throughout his time in the preseason. Whenever he got out there, he made a couple of throws that were like, okay, he's got something here. There's some ability here. There's something to work with, something to mold. And we know with Jim Harbaugh, obviously, somewhat of a QB whisperer, you know, if you will, you know, throughout his career, worked with some fantastic players, and also has taken Trey Lance and really resurrected his career and really gave him a new voice, and seems like he is really taken to that. And I'd like to see what he could do with DJ on a practice squad. Yeah, 16 of 31 overall. It didn't, you know, turn out to be super fantastic, but 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, including the late one to Luke Grimm, and of course the interception, which you never want to see that. But overall, 19 of 35, 244 yards, a pair of touchdowns, and a long of 49 yards. So he did have that nice deep bomb as well throughout the preseason. So yeah, I think he's got some tools, some skills to work with, and I'd like to see him on the practice squad.
Yeah, and a great opportunity for him to get out there and have 31 passing attempts in a game, right? And I think that was always kind of the buck on DJU, was just like, hey, so much talent. Was Trevor Lawrence's backup at Clemson before transferring a couple times, but just had some bonehead plays. And I think if you're talking about, hey, who is a coaching staff that could potentially take a guy that makes some really bad turnovers and kind of iron things out for him? The Chargers literally did it this year with Trey Lance, to your point. So worth keeping around for sure. Probably not going to be on the active game day roster, but I would rather have him as the emergency third practice squad quarterback than I would to have all 3 quarterbacks with Justin Herbert, Taylor Heineke, and Trey Lance all being on the roster. So
amen.
I'll say that part of it. But let's also give a shout out to Dale Von Campbell, because part of DJU's great performance in the first half was like, Dale Von Campbell's down there somewhere, and I'm going to put it in the vicinity, and he's going to go up and moss somebody to make the catch, because, man, it was 4 catches on 9 targets, admittedly, 73 yards, 18.3 yards per catch. But I thought another guy who showed exactly why he should be on the practice squad. There's going to be some candidates, Brendan Rice, Jalen Rager, Luke Grimm, who we're going to talk about, and also Dale Von Campbell. But this is a guy who had a lot of hype, had the one kind of big bad misplay with Trey Lance, and then, you know, against the Rams a couple of weekends ago where he probably should have had a walk-in touchdown. But besides that, this dude's exceeded all expectations. You know, 4'4" guy that's 6'4", big receiver. And also, I think, a great kind of scout team receiver. You got a big, giant receiver coming up, a Drake London coming up on your schedule, or whoever that may be. This is a great guy to kind of simulate some of those situations for these corners to kind of go up against on the scout team defense. So I think another practice squad guy, but man, I came away very impressed with Dale Von Campbell. I thought he had a great end to his preseason.
A guy that can jump out of the building, that can really go up and get the football. And you saw that throughout the preseason. 8 receptions on 18 targets, 147 yards, and 18.4 yards per reception. Just a big play guy. I feel like you can definitely find a spot for him on the roster. I think he showed enough that he is a playmaker.
Yeah, the practice squad roster.
Practice squad, yes. Practice squad.
Find space for him there. But will Luke Grimm be on there? We're going to talk about that. But the first thing we have to talk about next is Joe Ortiz giving some optimism around Najee Harris. Are we believing it? Because there are major roster implications that come along with that, including if Rocket Sanders can get on this squad. So we're going to talk about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. That's why me, David, and Locked On Chargers are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I know I've always switched to Yahoo in the last couple of years with all of my leagues, including my work league and my friends league too. But to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. So much to get into, and I'm super excited. Make sure you guys are here tonight when we do our live show, our final 53-man roster prediction. And this is one of, I'm going to say, the toughest one that I've ever had to do since we've covered this team. We've covered this team for 10 years, David, which shows you kind of the talent at the bottom of this roster. But thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. Speaking of fantasy football, make sure you guys, if you need a second listen, are getting ready to dominate your fantasy football leagues with the Locked On Fantasy Football Show with Vinny Iyer and Michelle Madjuk, because what you don't want to be is the laughingstock of your fantasy football league. So check that out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Najee Harris news is not something I thought we were going to get this weekend, and some of the most important things that we learned this weekend did not come on the field. They came from in the booth, where general manager Joe Ortiz was getting interviewed by Dan Fouts in the CBS broadcast booth, and Dan Fouts asked him, hey, what's going on with Najee Harris? And David, I think many people, including me, were surprised by what the response to that was.
It definitely was, and me included. This is exactly what he said here. He said, Najee's doing great, going through all the medical processes, but he's on track, and I think he should be able to go, hopefully, in week 1. That is quite the statement, because we obviously have not heard a single thing at all through Coach Harbaugh, which is, typical Jim Harbaugh style. He's not going to give you anything. That's just, as he said, he's not qualified to talk about injuries, which is hilarious to me, but that's just his process. So to get any kind of information at all, anything that indicates that he may be ready, I think that's something that we could take to be somewhat positive news.
It's the most positive news that you could get. And I think outside of, Najee Harris telling us himself that he's going to be out there week 1, I don't think there's anything that you could take, with at full face value or without a grain of salt. And I would take this with a grain of salt, because there are major roster implications if they decide to either activate Najee Harris off the NFI list and keep him on the 53-man roster, or if they decide that he's not going to be back and he'll have to miss the first 4 weeks if he's not taken off, the first 4 games, I should say. Man, it's hard. Like, the thing is that there's so much gray area, right? There's so much gray area in between being back for week 1 and missing 4 games of the season. Like, this could be something where, okay, maybe he's not out there week 1, but he could be out there week 2, in which case he absolutely is going to be on the opening 53-man roster. But as we're tonight going to do a live show making our final predictions, how do you do it without knowing if you should be including Najee Harris on your 53-man prediction? So I'm still a little bit skeptical on, or still believe there's a chance that he could be on the NFI list and he could still miss the first 4 games, even with Joe Ortiz saying this. But this is the closest I've felt as far as confidence to think, okay, maybe he will actually be out there, and there is a chance that he's not going to have to miss the first 4 games. But one of the guys that's going to impact directly is Rocket Sanders, who I thought in this game showed more flashes, like showed more of why you would keep him. And I think that is mainly, just looks physically different than the other backs that they have out there. Looks the best of the backs they're putting out there, at the same time behind a decrepit offensive line that, the reserves that just absolutely gave nothing to any of the backs with the football in their hands. It was so hard to tell, and this was a tough evaluation process, and it sucks because it feels like if there was a competent line in front of Rocket Sanders, we could have seen him have a special preseason, but we can only see what we can see. And David, what did you think about his final game, his last chance to put his best foot forward?
Yeah, for Rocket, 13 carries for 48 yards, which is about 3.7 yards per carry. And yes, we like Daniel just said, the offensive line was not good. They weren't doing him any favors, that's for sure. But at least I think when you compare him to the other running backs that were in the running, he was the guy that was able to kind of get the most forward momentum. He was able to show some speed, he was able to get to the outside. He was able to break some tackles. He had showed some vision. Overall, it's 28 carries for 101 yards, 3.6 yards per carry, including 2 touchdowns and 5 receptions for 29 yards. So he did show some ability to catch the football out of the backfield as well, which is good. I think for him, I mean, I would have loved to have seen, a more kind of emphatic statement here, but I feel like this is a guy who's been steady. When he did, come back from, dealing with some early injuries, I feel like he's been a productive player and a guy I feel like has a pretty strong case. He definitely has the body type and the size and style that the Chargers clearly want. I mean, you look at their top two running backs, big, strong, physical guys with Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton. I think Rocket Sanders would fit well within that group.
And the hard thing is Kamani Vidal didn't play in the game because he was hurt, and we don't know how long in the game he would have played because the Chargers basically had 2 running backs they were using, Naheem Miller-Hines and Rocket Sanders. So we wouldn't have had to see, okay, well, Kamani Vidal was playing deep into the fourth quarter, even if, and Rocket sat out the second half. We would have some, something significant as far as them telling us who is going to make this team. Rocket being out there for the entire game could have just been, him being able to showcase himself and then wanting to see more of it, or it could have just been a lack of bodies because Jarrett Patterson wasn't out there. Hassan Haskins is safe, so they weren't really playing him in this game. So hard to really say, but man, it's just if the flashes are enough. Like every game, he would have a moment, a big chunk run, and this one it was an 11-yarder where he sets up blocks nicely, cuts in and out, gets every possible yard that he can. Yeah. It just feels like he's an NFL back. It feels like he didn't really have a chance to show, undeniable production that would make him impossible to leave off the roster, and you'd basically be doing it off of the glimpses that you have, which is a lot tougher. But
yeah,
there were guys who, put their best foot forward, and then there was guys who didn't. And you have to start, David, with Luke Grimm, who, followed in the footsteps of Naheem Miller-Hines, another guy who didn't put his best foot forward in this game. After returning a punt return touchdown last week, he had 2 muffed punts on Saturday. The Chargers lost both of them. They both turned into touchdowns for the other team. Luke Grimm, the hype train was at an all-time high last week. It came crashing down to earth in his preseason finale.
Yeah, it surely did. Unfortunately for Luke Grimm, that's really what he had to do, is make big plays on special teams because he wasn't really doing anything on offense. We're talking about 4 receptions for 34 yards on offense total the entire preseason for Luke Grimm. So he had to make his plays on special teams, and there's nothing that is going to put the nails in the coffin faster than muffing 2 punts and losing both of them. Unfortunately, that's going to be all she wrote for Luke Grimm.
Yeah, outside of potentially making the practice squad, and we'll see what happens there. I don't think it's impossible he won't be on the practice squad, but you'd have to think this at least hit, it takes a hit, his chances do. This is someone, though, that Jim Harbaugh, when he first talked about him, put him in the same category as someone like a Rocket Sanders, where they had done their homework on him, weren't sure if he was going to be undrafted, and he wasn't doing some of the things they made all the undrafted rookies do, especially early on in those camps. So they know some about him. They've watched the tape on him, but it's practice squad or nothing for him at this point after 2 muff punts. Did get a touchdown at the end. I was glad to see him be able to find a little bit of redemption there. But Naheem Miller-Hines, I mean, I can't believe we saw two separate players have two muffed punts in the same game. Like that's in different games, but the same player's doing it twice. It's crazy to me. I've never seen that. And both these guys needed that element to be able to prove that added value that they bring to the table, which is why it's so tough. And Naheem Miller-Hines, almost pulled a Luke Grimm and almost returned a punt back for a touchdown and ended up getting called back. The block didn't really do anything for the actual return itself. It was still very, very impressive. What's going to kill him, though, is in the game that he had the great punt return, he put the ball on the ground again, man. And it's just, David, for as cool of a story as it is with Naheem Miller-Hines, and he showed a lot of great things in pass protection. I think he showed that he still had some juice, still had some wiggle, especially given his circumstances. But, man, 3 fumbles, it feels impossible to come back from.
Yeah, it was a great story for him to be able to make it back to the NFL after a really bad, off the field type of injury that took 2 years of his career. So to see him to be able to make it back healthy enough to be able to get back on the football field is a great story. Unfortunately, it seems like the time away definitely kind of wore a little bit on his skills because we're talking about 3 fumbles here, 2 of them lost. 3 receptions for 13 yards, which, he's supposed to be a receiving back. So we didn't really see a lot of that. And on the ground, 21 carries, 65 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. It's just not enough. He had to be special on special teams, and he clearly was not. And so, him and Luke Grimm probably definitely on the outside looking in.
I think the one thing Naheem Miller-Hines has as far as, things going for him is you don't have to base it all off one preseason, right? Like he has years and years of NFL experience that you can go off of. So he didn't have to show that he could prove it against NFL talent. He's already done that. So that is the one kind of leg up he has as far as, I don't think he's making the 53, but as far as potentially making the practice squad, feels like a guy who has a valuable skill set and is obviously a little bit rusty. I mean, he's only even been involved with the Chargers, a little over a month now. So I don't feel like it's a true indication of how ready he is to be back because, again, hard to hold the yards per carry against him because he's going in the same line that all of these other running backs are struggling to find any breathing room on. So Naheem Miller-Hines, tough game for him and Luke Grimm. Had a chance to kind of make a statement. And while there were statements made by Marlo Wax and Nikko Reed, it also comes with the flip side of guys not being able to and kind of fumbling the bag in that sense. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tonight. We're going to go live today. We're like, hey, 53-man roster prediction. That's going to happen midday Tuesday. Let's go live Monday night and give our final 53-man roster prediction. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as us blasting it out to all of our social media. So you can find it at Locked On OIC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page because we want to be with you, here with you guys. We've done it, 10 times. This is the toughest one. A lot of good conversations that are going to have to be had tomorrow, maybe a longer show tomorrow because of so many conversations. But make sure you're here, especially because we might have some news on who has already been cut. But I'll tell you who probably hasn't been cut yet. A lot of panic out there. Our boy Tony Jefferson, probably a little bit of a trolling right there. I'll just say that we're not as concerned about it as we once were. But make sure you're back here tomorrow when we make tonight, then the live show when we make our final predictions. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.